You know the theme, the effects of global white supremacy. It is going to be covered from our guests from several different perspectives. One historical, one psychological, and one legal. We will start with our elder in the historical, Dr. John Henrik Clarke.
Thank you again. We have a lot of work to do, short time to do it. After we have finished the 3 lectures, there should be 4, but we're going to settle for 3. The lectures will be transcribed. All of us will take our respective lectures and build in the documents, and I will edit all of the lectures into a book and start. The book will contain, in addition to an extension of what we have said here, the major documents on the extension of global white supremacy all over the world, how it started, Greek attitudes, Roman attitudes, even the attitudes of semi-white people like the Arabs, who will separate custom from religion, things that you believe to be the truth that is really folklore. It's so difficult to get people to recognize that certain things were imposed on you that were alien to your society, that came out of other societies. And you accept these things, you're willing to kill each other over them. And there's the word of truth in it. All right, we don't have time for any form of chit-chat. The focus of my talk, all too short given the subject, the focus of the talk will be global white supremacy from the end of the 19th century to the middle of the 20th century and the African independence explosion. Now, when it happened at the end of the 19th century, African people all over the world had engaged in protracted revolutions and had given themselves something they need right now, something their children need right now, something all of them misinterpreted and removed from their memory: the longest revolutionary heritage of any people on the face of the earth. Giving up a true revolutionary heritage, they began to follow people who didn't know where they were going. They began to accept books called the Bible. They began to hear stories about the rescue of a Holy Grail. Number 1, wasn't holy. Number 2, wasn't laws. Number 3, wasn't there in the first place. There is an essential myth through the life of most of the people in the world. Now, with interpretation of the curricula as a feel-good curriculum, the criticizers of our desire for a correct curriculum have had nothing but a feel-good curriculum. But they don't want anyone else in the world to feel good. Now, if they stop telling lies about themselves, integrate our truth, maybe all of us can feel good together, and you have universal humanity other than global white supremacy. What the fight over the curricula is about their claiming things that they couldn't possibly have produced, because the things that they claim are older than their existence. It came up this morning on WWRL, a man or a lady, it called, reporting about some 12 gates. In the names of the 12 gates. Give me this name. Gates to the holy city. I said, that presupposes that I believe the story in the first place. It also presupposes that I accept Jerusalem as the Holy Land. And I do not. I have no Holy Land outside of the physical property of Africa. So what you are calling Jerusalem and what you are calling the Middle East or Western Asia was once an African colony and an extension of Africa. But the first holy city that the Africans declared or any other people declared in the whole world is Abydos. And that city is still there intact. Jerusalem has been destroyed several times. And Jerusalem was given to us out of someone else's folklore, while we ignore the city we built with our own hand, still standing, not holy by us, because someone else told us another city was holy. Now, as we came down to the end of the 19th century, the Africans had been engaged in anti-colonial wars. Global white supremacy had manifested itself in the form of slavery. We had had 400 years of it by now. Europe had recovered at our expense. The products from Jamaica, Haiti, and other West Indian islands had restored the economy of Europe. South America, that mulatto continent, contributed very little to Europe then, contributed very little to Europe now. The race in between was in conflict with itself, not worth a conversation here, because these were want to be whites. I wish the hell I was whites, pretending that they are white. That's another lecture, another day. When I have enough strong men to protect me from the podium to the street where the car is running, to get me the hell out of here and keep me being killed, I will deliver the lecture on the role of the bastards in history. The people created by the coming together of blacks and whites who go through life, in most cases, debating whether they're loyal to their mother's people or their father's people, not knowing that every time they knock on their father's door, their father won't open the door, leaving them with no other door to come into but their mother's people's door. And yet, so many times they have no loyalty to their mother's house. In Africa, they had fought 100 years of colonial wars. These Africans who never wore a store-bought shoe or heard of a military school, in their fight against global white supremacy, had out-generaled some of the finest military minds of Europe.
All right.
And whose word do we have for this? A young British reporter named Winston Churchill, in a book called The River War, dealing with the British retaking of the Sudan, and another one called A Roving Commissioner, dealing with the Boer War in South Africa. These Africans did not concede that anyone had the right to take over their country. So the Asante Wars in what is now Ghana, the wars along the East Coast, engineered, brought into being by Islam, Europe, after chattel slavery was turned into another form of slavery called colonialism, a more sophisticated kind of slavery and more profitable. You're less responsible for the upkeep of the slave, and yet he has no choice but to work with you because you destroyed his way of life. He must now survive by serving you. You torn down his trees, you killed his farm life, you laughed at his gods, you told him his clothes was ugly so he not wears your clothes. You reduced him to a vassal by demeaning his culture and demeaning him. Some traditional Africans who would not wear their clothes, adopt their tastes, decided to fight. They did not go to London, to Whitehall Street. They did not go and laugh at the smiling ladies under the chandelier. The minute the African went to London and saw a chandelier and had a cocktail in his hand, he was doomed. So global white supremacy was manifesting itself in many ways because they had produced a mechanism of control. Now, having controlled the body, they wanted to control the mineral wealth of Africa. They knew then what you still do not know. Africa is and has always been the world's richest continent.
All right.
And we are a rich people who are poor because we have not understood our riches. That juvenile delinquent who came out of Europe shooting babies in the back and calling himself a superior man at least knew something about the African who befriended him. He knew that he was politically naive. At the end of the 19th century, the Africans had 100 years of fighting this supremacy. The European had created a literature trying to justify his superiority. This literature had to deal with the brain side, head measurement, a whole lot of things had absolutely no scientific basis. Doubt, people looking for the missing link. The missing link cannot be possibly found any place except in Europe. So they created a man in Europe, took a skeleton, buried the skeleton, dug it up. Didn't have any In the meantime, there were Europeans debunking all of this that no one paid any attention to, then or now. But in the closing years of the 19th century, there was a royal prostitute in Belgium named Leopold, who had houses of joy in different capitals of Europe, and he was spending a whole lot of money on these houses because he kept them the year round and sometimes could use them about once or twice a year. He's looking around for capital. There are nations in Europe who did not get in on the slicing up of Africa. They would call a conference at Berlin where they would split up the rest of Africa, but all those got a little muscle. The Germans got a big slice. The Germans got 4 nice pieces. Southwest Africa, now Namibia, the Cameroons, Togoland, now Togo, and Tanzania. They began almost a rehearsal for Nazism in Africa because the civilian governor of Southwest Africa was Jewish. The military governor was Herman Goering's father.
No.
If I didn't know what the documents, I wouldn't be saying it. Now, with these colonial wars being fought, African kings, so-called chiefs, been either driven into exile, driven to suicide, what do we got now? In the closing years of the 19th century, you got missionary-trained Africans who are now petitioning the European, appealing to his conscience, not knowing he had no conscience where power is concerned. There's no conscience to appeal to. Thou shalt not, the religion that said thou shalt not was meant for you. He gave that to you. He didn't intend to obey. Now after the Berlin Conference and France getting more colonial territory, Germany getting colonial territory, Belgium getting the big Congo, Portuguese getting a little piece, all of the gangsters agreed on the slice. No African attending. And at this conference, an American Stanford allegedly attended the conference, saying as his rationale that the Congo might one day be a place to settle American blacks. Abraham Lincoln went through that same charade. Now you want to know what would have happened had Abraham Lincoln not been shot. I'm sorry he got shot. Had he not been shot, he had to make a movement to get all of us out of here. Even to the corner of Brazil, any place, let's get you out of here. And while he did not believe in slavery, because it was an unwieldy labor system, he didn't believe in your presence and said point blank, you will never be the social equal of a white person in any case. So while you are welcome, celebrating Lincoln's birthday, do a little sobering thinking and read Lerone Bennett's famous article, Was Abraham Lincoln a White Racist? He asked the question and he answered the question affirmatively. He was.
All right.
Now, as we come down to the end of the 19th century, Africa is shifting gears. The warriors are leaving the field. The missionary-trained African activists are moving charge of the youth. They exiled King Prempeh and his cousin, Ye Asantewaa, who led the last of the Shanty Wars. And these wars were really wars to maintain European control over Africa, therefore a part of global white supremacy. At this juncture, we see North Africa coming under the French. We see the Arab, who's a colonizer and a slaver, being colonized. We saw resistance coming within this whole structure, and yet we see an intellectual movement existing in Africa in reaction to the continuous presence of the Europeans. Along the coast of East Africa, Somalia, a man named Muhammad bin Abdullah Hassan, the British called the Mad Mullah, had fought the British up until about 1923. Along the coast of West Africa, the Asante Wars in Ghana had lasted from 1805 until 1900, when the exiled Ye Asantewaa. After the exiled Ye Asantewaa case, the Hayford started a campaign for the return of the royal families and converted that campaign into a fight for independence. And when he died in 1931, he sent for a young student, Joseph B. Danquah, to send for J.P. and said, J.P., the mantle is yours. Joseph B. Danquah, in turn, had a young student under his wing called Francis K. Nkrumah. Right. Francis K. Nkrumah, after attending the Pan-African Conference of 1945 in Manchester, England, was broke and in London, and like a whole lot of Africans, eking out a mere existence, serving the unfulfilled British women. Sinclair Drake, unfortunately deceased now, he said, when we get together, he said, John, one of these days I'm going to tell a real story about these African heads of state and what they had to do to get along. I said, Sinclair, have another cocktail. Sinclair, have another cocktail. I'm going to tell the real story. He never, the real story. I'm glad he never told the real story. My main point is that Joseph B. Danquah sent for his former student that until the end of his days he addressed as Francis K. Nkrumah. He never called him Kwame, just like he was in the classroom. And Nkrumah, being brought home to take the mantle of leadership from Danquah, got impatient. And instead of waiting for the mantle to be handed to him traditionally, seized the mantle and led the country to independence. Had he waited for it 2 more years, it could have been done more peacefully. There could have been a mixture of tradition and modernism. It would have been a much better state with the infusion of traditional government. Now, we were now becoming a prize to be captured because the land, the resources of Africa becoming a prize to be captured. Africans were now relating to Africans in the Caribbean and Africans in the United States. A great Caribbean figure, Edmund Blyden, had proclaimed and literally prophesied the concept of black studies in his inaugural address, Liberia College, 1881. He had already written his crowning masterpiece, deserved to be reread right now, Christianity, Islam, and the Negro Race. All of us are mixed up on all the subjects. We're mixed up on all forms of religion. was mixed up on all forms of politics. The European was still justifying the domination of other people through politics. All right, now, we had at the end of the 19th century a better Pan-African network when it took 2 months for a letter to be delivered than we've got right now. People were not boasting of any island they came from. The Africans understood the artificial nature of the state divided by foreigners. Some of them understood the artificial nature of the religion imposed on them by foreigners. All of this was a form of global white supremacy. All over the world, it began to happen. It had reached Asia. In China, the Europeans had their own courts. In Shanghai, there was hotels. The Chinese and dogs not allowed. And some of the people who will spit on you now were then being spit upon. All this is documented. Edgar Snow's work, another work called 400,000 Customers. The only Chinese woman that could go into one of the hotels had to be a prostitute or a cleaning woman. This kind of humiliation. The British had reduced an entire nation to dope, to opium. You think you can't survive crack? They were worse off than you ever was. If they survived it, you can survive it. But you ain't gonna survive unless you crack some heads. In the 1880s, an admiral named Perry kicked open the door of Japan to trade with the West, whether you like it or not. No, it's earlier than that. The Japanese were minding their own business. The silkworm, making that beautiful kimono, wooden shoe. Didn't even have a decent wheelbarrow. Never heard of a Toyota or a Datsun. When people are asleep, sometimes it's best to leave them alone. Now, I'm going to show you what they did that you still got to do until you stop, until you do it, you are jiving about independence, about freedom. A Japanese educator called in the youth of Japan and told them what had happened. And he sent them to the leading schools of the world, to get that information, get that technology. And if they smear that body waste in your face, apologize for having your face in the way. So he sent them to MIT. They went to military schools in the United States and wouldn't even let a black person sweep the floor. 2/3 of all the field officers that faced America in the Pacific War were trained in America. Every field officer practically trained. Virginia Military Academy was the main trainer. Black men is not even there, even now. My main point is that by 1905, the Japanese had learned enough to take on a European nation. And when the Russians started messing with them, they started kicking butt. And they defeated them.
Right.
And this shocked Europe so much until they began to propagate something called the Yellow Danger. This is the beginning and the basis of anti-Asianism. Manifests itself in the stereotypes in the movies. A Japanese detective called Mr. Moto, Fu Manchu, Charlie Chan. And what do we have? Stephen Fetcher. They have control over the movies. All of this is global white supremacy. That control our colonization of the Bible. They're sitting down Sunday school lesson with all white angels. Every single thing that came out of the European mind was meant to facilitate his control over the world. He's got no hesitation about it, and he's got no apologies. You buying it hook, line, and sinker. You buying his concept. All religion is good when it is practiced good. All religion can be bad, but all religion that I know of is used for one people to control another people. Because they killed the spirituality in the religion itself. The missionaries were handmaidens of colonialism, and they still are. The African trained by the missionary began to react. So global white supremacy was manifesting itself in the commerce of the world of that day.
Right.
The Caribbean islands now realize that while their independence, their emancipation came 30 years before black Americans, their emancipation was a fake and ours was a fake. And when you're boasting, all you're saying that my fakery came before your fakery. So many of them, the rebels, went back to the hills. The best example is uprising in Jamaica, 1865, in Moret Bay. George Gordon and that crowd. Now, in the United States, because of the pressure, we had produced the greatest line of intellects of any people living outside of Africa. The climate was cold in New England. You could only work a slave 6 months a year. So you begin to have slave carpenters, slave craftsmen. You would farm them out. You begin to develop industrial slaves. They made a little money on the side. They could buy their way out of indentury. It wasn't quite as difficult. They began to read, write, run newspapers. Frederick Douglass escaped into this group. Yet the concept of getting back to Africa was prevalent. 5,000 Africans in this country had fought with the British against American independence, an incident left out of history. After the British lost the war, they had to get rid of them. So the British sent them to Canada and to Nova Scotia. Global white supremacy is now manifesting itself in the failure to acknowledge that every American citizen is a citizen. If you're a citizen, you need no civil rights movement or no civil rights action. The fact that you need it proves that they have not acknowledged you as a citizen. In a nation of immigrants, We are the immigrants against our will. We are the only immigrants who were invited here.
Right.
The nature of the invitation will not be discussed here. They were anxious to get us here. We had an affirmative action program waiting for us. No unemployment. No pay either. We transformed this nation. My main point is that the first half of this 19th century, we were fighting against global white supremacy in the Back-to-Africa movement that had started during the American Revolution, the movement to settle Liberia, 1847, with Martin Delany and the Jamaican Campbell going out to what is now Nigeria to search for a place. All of this was a reaction against global white supremacy. A lady in Nigeria who had been in the slave trade discovered that she was not a labor contractor and her people were not returning. She began to fight against the slave trade. She began to fight against other Africans in the slave trade. Her name was Madame Tanabu. And when she continued her fight, not only to get out of it herself, but to fight everybody in the trade. Her husband had died, and there was a man pursuing her hand. And she told this man, I cannot marry you now because I have men's work to do and I do not have time to be a woman. She fought every king in the slave trade.
All right.
And when she had removed the last king from his throne, she turned to the man pursuing her hand and said that, I am a woman now, I'll accept your offer. You think you're not rich? Look what a beautiful opera that was made. What a beautiful opera. There's so many things that we in our life that we haven't converted. It be a beautiful children's story, be a beautiful adult story. Beautiful story of conversion, the story of Madame Tanabu. I can name you 100 of them now. I've done nothing but research. Don't get me wrong, I've researched the latest for other reasons too, but academic reasons as well. Now, early after we entered the 20th century, we were in a conflict over Booker T. Washington's theory, Du Bois, a conflict we never should have entered in the first place. Global white supremacy was manifesting itself in restrictions in the West Indies, in restrictions in Africa, in the continued partitioning of Africa and buying off or killing off all dissident elements. In this country, massive riots, 1906. Our reaction to Booker T. Washington's program was self-reliance, which is a form of nation building or nation management. Those terrible years between 1900 and 1915, Africans progressing all over the world, in the Caribbean islands fighting for constitutional government and improving their own lot because they were a majority, but they still did not remove the private clubs in every island, but they had broken themselves down into clubs for brown people, clubs for almost white people, clubs for black people. We see L.R. James Beyond the Boundaries and his other works on the subject. You can understand it and read Rex Neverfort's work, Mirror, Mirror, and another work, Color and Race and Color in Caribbean Literature. The British had built in an army to some of the islands, especially in Barbados, by telling them that they were English, and they became as English as the English. And by enough infusion of blood in Jamaica, they would hold their hands because they're fighting their relatives. And yet there was a group fighting for constitutional government, consistently fighting for improvement. 1908, Marcus Garvey would make his tour of Central America. 1914, he would be in London studying under Dewes Muhammad Ali. And in Dewes Muhammad Ali's paper, he would read an editorial which was a quote from, of all things, of white black nationalists. Edmund Booth, who had grown disenchanted with other missionaries and went around Africa saying to the African, the white man can't be trusted. And when finally the African looked at him and asked him, can you be trusted? To his everlasting credit, he said no. And he proclaimed, Africa for the Africans. Marcus Garvey read it and added the phrase, Africa for the Africans, those at home and those abroad. Right. Marcus Garvey and his entire movement was a result of reaction to global white supremacy. The African colonial movement was a result of it. The early church movement in the United States was a result of the fight against global white supremacy. We wanted to get back some of our African self. The Chief Sam movement in Oklahoma was as a result, Africans trying to escape global white supremacy. This story is told in a book called The Longest Way Home, the Chief Sam movement in Oklahoma. Many blacks sold their property and gathered different harbors, waiting for a ship to take them home to Africa. The Pap Singleton movement for resettlement in the United States. The Liberian movement continued. 1915, Booker T. Washington was dead. Du Bois moved to the center stage of leadership, replaced soon by the attention given to Marcus Garvey. The rise and fall of his movement has been told many times. There's an 8-volume book of documents edited by Professor Robert Hill on the life of Marcus Garvey. You can argue with Professor Hill's notes, you can argue with his introduction, you can argue with the fact that some of it seemed a little conservative, but you cannot argue with the fact that he has given us the greatest documentation on Marcus Garvey ever, going through the archives of most of the libraries where anything on Garvey existed. I think Tony Martin's work equally demands attention. And when you're tired of those and would forgive the modesty, I think my own work. Some attention. Because I'm going to extend these remarks into a full-blown book. I need not do everything tonight, and I'm a fan of both of my colleagues, and I want you to hear them also. So, one of the things I admired about Martin Luther King, he had such a magnificent way of closing things out. I think of too many closing and get confused about which one I'm going to use. But I'm going to call on you not only to look at global white supremacy, but look at the global possibilities of African people coming together as a people across all national lines and across all religious lines. Van der Cook has said, a race is like a man until it loves its own history and its own memory. It cannot fulfill itself completely. I say not only to understand global white supremacy, but to understand yourself. You must be acquainted with your history. I have said that history is a clock that people use to tell their political and cultural time of day, and it is a compass that people use to find themselves on the map of human geography. History tells you where you've been and what you've been, where you are and what you are. Most important, history gives you some direction about where you still must go and what you still must be. The relationship of a people to their history is the same as the relationship of a child to its mother. When we look at Europe crumbling, maybe we need to stop imitating people who can't find their own way and stop following people who don't know where they are going. We need to entertain the possibility that we can give the world a new human society. We need to heal some of these wounds, some of all the cleavages between us. Take pride in wherever you were born. Be parochial, but remember, the common denominator is African. You can't answer with any other word, because the name of any people must reflect land, history, and culture. And through our own life, let us say to a Malcolm and a Martin and the many thousands gone who put it on the line for our freedom and lost it. With our collective selves, let us sell the differences between us and let them know they did not do it in vain.
All right.
Professor John Henrik Clarke. Professor John Henrik Clarke. Once again, brothers and sisters, Professor John Henrik Clarke. The effects of global white supremacy, a historical overview. Before we continue, we'll let you relax for just a couple of minutes. We'd like to welcome a brother who has been very much a power force in relationship to UAM and certainly to the activities here at the Slave Theater. He'd like to speak to you for a few moments. Let's welcome Brother Roy Kenton to our microphones here this evening.
Thank you. Let's give another hand again to Dr. Clarke. What I also would like for you to know, when Alton asked me to get involved with this program, I have to say that the person that has been the greatest help in me doing the things in the United African Movement, in giving me the advice and recommending people and so forth and project has been Dr. Clarke. Let's give him a hand again. Tonight, we got to make this very quick. We got a lot of information to give tonight. That was only part one of two more other parts. So again, we're going to ask you to help us pay the bills. Needless to say, you know, there was somebody that was your color, was in the audience and had to be removed because we only take care of our own. Okay? So we don't have nobody else funding this organization. So we're going to ask you very quickly to please dig deep tonight and help us not only do this, but continue the program that the slave has been provided for the black community. So we're going to ask all of you who can give 100 or more, please come to the front now, and we would appreciate that. And if you notice, again, as usual, United African Movement never charges an admission, although I have to admit that initially, this event tonight, when we first did part one, I did suggest to Brother Maddox that we should charge for that one because of its expense. And his position then, as it is now, under no condition he'll be involved with the charging black people for information for liberation. So I think we should applaud Brother Maddox. So again, we ask you to make this as quickly as we possibly can. Please, you with 100 or more, please come up to the front and we will get rolling. And
ourselves. Let's welcome Dr. Amos Wilson this evening to the Slave Theater.
Thank you very much. It's indeed a pleasure and an honor to be invited back here this evening to share this time with you. And I'm very flattered to have been invited again and to be with such distinguished platform guests. Before we get started, I'd like to sort of do a little rooting here in terms of something we're doing. I had an organization that we are rapidly developing called the Pan-African Research and Development Foundation. And I co-direct that with Brother Joseph Gilliams. Brother Gilliams is a very dear friend, along with Brother Sababu Plata, who is in partnership with me and my publishing company, African World Info Systems. Brother Gilliams' work you've seen on the cover of Black on Black Violence. And you will see his work on the cover of my other 3 or 4 books, which will be coming out within a month or so. You've also seen, of course, his covers on many other books from McGraw-Hill and other large companies. We have a pool of talent over there at African Research and Development Foundation. And as you can probably surmise from the title of our foundation, we're very much concerned with African-centered research that can be used, but at the same time, as implied by the word development, we're concerned with very practical work. Those of you who have known me for a while know that in addition to my studies and my lecturing and writing, I believe in getting my hands dirty, in doing real things in the real world. Some of you have been familiar, of course. You're familiar, of course, with the business I established over there on 125th. We're back in business again. And, definitely. Because ideology and great thoughts must ultimately be turned into reality. And this is what we're doing over at African Research and Development Foundation. Now, what we are passing out here, I've received Brother Maddox's permission for us to pass out a form. This form is just wants to, with this form, we want to know if you would be supportive of credit unions across New York City. As I will speak about later, it takes money to run a revolution. You have to finance revolutions. You have to buy guns. You have to finance research. You have to finance your health. And while it's good to get caught up in Afrocentrism as idea and ideology, ultimately it must be transformed into wealth and must be transformed into material to be utilized for our advancement as a people. We must finance our own revolution, and we must transform our world economically. The Pan-African Research and Development Foundation then is beginning to dam this bed. The credit unions that we are now researching will only be one arm of the economic development that we are about. The next time we picket Koreans, we want them out of the stores, and we want to finance our people into those stores. So therefore, we are, in addition to the credit unions, which of course will be used for business finance, we are developing a loan fund, a business loan fund, so we can do the 1-2 punch. Get you out and replace you. So we're not going to just use a lot of energy protesting. We are going to actually displace those people who've captured the black internal market. So we need your support to do that. And we, of course, have other plans. You'll be hearing more from us as we join together with your organization and other organizations here to organize the whole of the United States, and this is in unity with everyone else, and ultimately to organize and be a part of the organization of the total African world to end white supremacy. It's very important, of course. A good deal of the information inside tells you what a credit union is, what it's about. It gives you a little introduction over there about what is being done to us in terms of the credit markets. You know, we are putting billions of dollars into these banks and getting nothing out. Our money is being used to finance our own oppression. We have to take this money out of these financial institutions and use it to our own advantage. We are very much concerned here that you fill in the back page the credit union pledge form. Now, we want you to keep in mind, though, that this is non-binding, so that you're not legally committed to it. But in order to develop the in order to develop the credit union, we have to have some idea of what kind of initial funding we will have, so that you can point out what you possibly could deposit in the credit union on the back of this form. And leave us your address so that we can contact you as to further developments. We would appreciate your participation. Thank you very much. This is our third set of lectures here. We've talked about white global supremacy. We talked about the effects of white global supremacy. Now, it is time for us to begin the talk of how it should be brought to a close. Yes? We must prepare for war. Yeah. On a number of levels. Yeah. Think the unthinkable. That's what you got to do if you're going to get out of this situation here. I know we've been conditioned into thinking of the European as invincible. Yes. But you gotta get over that kind of thought. This man bleeds and dies like any other man. He's already bleeding. He's already throwing up over the world as it is. He's already sick. It's time for him to be finished off. And we must do it. We can't just wait for him to be done in by other folk. As I was saying earlier today, it's nice we look at the Japanese and the games that they're running on the Europeans. But I will tell you up front, the Japanese are no party either. And I tell you, we haven't fought this fight, and we're not going to fight this fight against white supremacy to come under Asian supremacy. We must be prepared to fight any people who are the enemies of our freedom and liberation, regardless of color and ethnic background. You got to face it. And that means you got to appropriately organize yourself to do it. And you must visualize yourself doing it as a people. Yes. I'll talk later. You see, I get this little hesitancy and I feel it out there. And I can hear the little butterfly wings out there. Yes. But you got to get over the conditioning. Because as I will tell you the show later on, you see, the white man has conditioned us to a certain extent that when we begin to think certain kind of thoughts, our stomachs become upset. We get a little feeling down here so that we can automatically withdraw from the thought. And in that sense, we become self-oppressing. And we become allies with our oppressors. Yes. I wish I had time to develop it today, ladies and gentlemen, and how the thought control has been so subtle. We talked about the education of black children. I hear people talking about teaching our children to think, and this is what we must do. Teaching them to think abstractly. And we attempted to see abstract thought as an academic problem. But abstract thinking is foremost a political problem that represents itself in the school as an academic problem. You see, in a sense, to act in terms of being an African is to act in terms of an abstraction. It means that you have looked over African people the world over, looked at their various cultural differences and national differences and so forth, and abstracted a commonality. that looks over African people speaking hundreds of different languages and so forth. And from those differences, you have abstracted a commonality called African. And yet that abstraction has a reality about it that makes it possible for Africans of whatever nationality or whatever culture to act as a collective against their oppressors. So you have to recognize that abstract thought at the very base is concrete thought, because it allows concrete and concerted action. That is why the European does not want your children to think abstractly, you see, and conceptually, you see, and it is projected as an academic problem, when really it is a political problem, because they know if we can think abstractly and act in terms of abstractions, such as Africanness and African consciousness, their day has ended. But you see, at the threshold of thinking abstractly, at the threshold of thinking cosmically, at the threshold of thinking conceptually, at the threshold of thinking in terms of implications, in terms of analogies, at the threshold of thinking deductively and inductively, at the threshold of thinking critically and critical analysis, there is planted anxiety. So that when people and when your teachers attempt to move you into these areas, you start feeling uncomfortable and out of place, and you back off of it, and therefore you maintain your oppression. You must learn to think abstractly, conceptually, and logically, and critically, even though your stomach is filled with butterflies. Even though you may be trembling, you still must think of the possibilities. And you must prepare yourself to meet your enemy and to bring him down and destroy him and stomp him into the dust. It is nothing wrong with having fear, but you must learn to act in spite of it. This is the situation. So, why are we in this situation we're in today in terms of white supremacy? Is it because the people are white? Is it because the people are mean? Is it because they have distorted genes? It's because they have power. That's what it comes down to. And because there is an inequality of power between us and these people. It doesn't matter what their skin color is. It doesn't matter what their genetic background is. It doesn't really matter, what their sociobiology is. The ultimate thing is they do to us what they do to us because they have the what? The power to do it. That's it. That's it. Now you can get caught up in long explanations if you want to. And you can do great genetic analyses if you wish. And that's fine, there's a place for all of that. But in the end, you're talking about a power differential. And this is one of the constants I referred to earlier today. That despite all the madness they go through, despite all of the disorganization they are experiencing, there are things they want to remain constant. And one of those things, of course, is what I call the power differential. The difference in power between Africans and Europeans. Despite what humiliation the United States is going through, it still has submarines all throughout the seas and the oceans of the world. right off of the coast of Japan and the other coast of this nation. If you looked at Channel 13 last night, they indicated that one of those submarines contained more firepower than all of the ballistics and firepower that was dropped during World War II. You understand? That's why I'm telling you today, this battle is not over here. Not by a long shot. So despite what they are going through, they are still trying to maintain the power differential. Because after all of the negotiations are over with, after all barfing takes place into the Prime Minister's lap, after all the huffing and puffing takes place, there is the iron fist of military power. That is always the ultimate diplomacy in the world. And it is always the thing that makes the ultimate decision. That is the power differential and the willingness of those who have it to use it. Now, why am I talking about that then? Because we as a people hesitate to talk about power. I've lectured all around. And if you want to get an audience quiet, a black audience quiet, you mention two things, power and money. Yeah. Somehow we have identified with poverty. Somehow we don't think we should be wealthy and prosperous. We got to the point where all you have to do is say poverty, we think black. You know, poor people, black. And yet Dr. Clarke told you, but we are what? Wealthy. We're the richest people. But what did I tell you? That in order for us to be in the condition we're in, we must be backwards. We must be turned backwards. Therefore, the richest people must see themselves as what? The poorest. That's the only way it can work. You see? And therefore, and then when they lay this religion on you, you think there's some virtue in poverty. Yes. And you fill yourself with nonsense, like poor but honest. And one of these days we have to have a conference on money and the place of money in the liberation struggle of African people. If you claim that the white man has despoiled and taken the wealth of our land and the treasure of our people, then when you take it back, what must you be? You must be what? Wealthy. Yes. If he took wealth from you, if the wealth that he has is what? Stolen, then when you reclaim your rightful resources, then you must enter into the wealth God gave you. And therefore, you must think in those terms and move beyond thinking in terms of poverty. Yes. But you see, in order for us to be in the condition we are in, we have to identify with poverty, and then we have to identify with weakness, powerlessness. And when we start talking about power, we have to begin to feel anxious. And anxiety is unpleasant, and people avoid unpleasantness. And if we move away from the thought of power, we will never accomplish it. So what are we saying here then? We are saying that the main thing that maintains the relationship between African and European people is a differentiation in power, a difference in power. Which means then, if we want to end white supremacy, we must end what? White power. Bring it to a close. Otherwise, you're just talking through your head.
Right.
You know, you're playing games with your mind. That's it. So then, that means, ladies and gentlemen, we now must enter on the stage where, in addition to studying history and culture and Afrocentricity and all of the other things, we must now study power and its acquisition, and we must study war. That's a part of it. How is white supremacy achieved and maintained? White global supremacy was attained and is maintained through the white conquest of power. What are we talking about here? People who have moved on the world stage nearly 500 years. Once powerless. You see, again, if you don't know history, we get some people who don't know history and they'll say, well, you know, this is the white man's world, and they assume that he's always ruling and he always will. But one thing about reading history tells you immediately the white man has been in a position of power only a fraction of a second in world time. Therefore, white power was not divinely intended. It was not created with the creation of the world, or they would have had it from the beginning. But they didn't have it from the beginning. And they will not have it in the end. Whites conquered power, and they increased power. Now we then have to look at this conquest of power and the processes that the ruling white class uses to maintain domination in the world. In other words, now we have to study subject matter, power as subject matter. We must not only compile what has happened to us, that's important, but now we have to move beyond compilation of complaints and injuries and so forth and begin to move in terms of how we are going to end the sources of our complaint. If we are to end white global supremacy, we must end, neutralize, or balance white power. To achieve this end, we must study power as subject matter. How it is achieved and how it is preserved. See, this is not multicultural education, as I told you the last time here. And I keep telling you again and again, African-centered education is not multicultural education. We are not educating our children just as one little culture among many. We're not educating them just to sing other people's songs and learn about other people's customs and rituals. We said at the center of an African-centered education is that you must learn how to solve your problem. Understand? And no education is any good, multicultural, monocultural, or what have you, for black people if it does not solve the problem of the bringing to a close white supremacy and oppression of African people. And this goal of bringing white power to a close begins to set the curriculum of African-centered education. Understand? And that's why you're going to study war as a part of your African-centered education. That's why you study the development of power as a part of African-centered education, and the preservation of power and the organization of power, because you need power to overcome your enemies and to achieve your liberation. We must come to know intimately the organization, the weaknesses and strength of the white power system, and develop appropriate strategies, organization, and resources for ending the oppressive presence of white people in the world. Got to do it. And therefore you must ask yourself, what is power? And begin to look at it. And we know that white power is systemic, that is, it is a system, and it is overt and covert. In its covert nature, and I'm quoting here, and I'm using a book by Thomas Dye, D-Y-E, Power and Society, 3rd edition. This is something I find interesting. The European will put the means by which he can be overthrown right in your hand. Yes, definitely. The European gives us freedom of speech. And what did I tell you? They give you freedom of speech only if the speeches that are most pertinent to your liberation are ignored. Yeah. And in a sense, during the slavery period and these other periods, the black mind has been organized in such a way where, in a sense, we are only free to do the wrong thing. Yeah. So now we'll let you talk about us and talk about like global supremacy and call Bush a dog and so forth and all of that, because the largest percentage of your people will yawn and go to sleep on it. Yeah. But you watch, as soon as you wake up and start listening and really taking it in, you'll see how much freedom of speech you have. Oh yeah. He knows right now you express your freedom by saying, I don't have to read. Because I'm a what? Free man. Yeah. I don't have to study power because I can do what I want to, and I just don't want to study power. Yeah. You watch how we express what? Freedom. And you'll see that that freedom is expressed in such a way that it maintains a system of oppression. That's why I tell you that we feel freest when we are most enslaved. It has to be that way if the system can let you run out here without pointing guns at you all the time. It must have implanted within our own mind an orientation in a sense so that we voluntarily, in expressing our freedom and independence, keep ourselves in jail. You see? So now you got to study and read. It's covert. Ordinary men and women are driven by forces in society that they neither understand nor control. These forces embodied in governmental authorities, economic organizations, social values and ideologies, accepted ways of life, and learned patterns of behavior. However diverse the nature of these forces, they have in common the ability to modify the conduct of individuals and to control their behavior and to shape their lives. What are we saying here? When I talk about African-centered education, I talk about an explicit curriculum and an implicit curriculum. And it's the implicit one that does the damage. You see, the one that you don't notice. You see, that organizes your behavior subtly. The very organization of the school, the very organization of the classroom, the very teacher-student relationship, the very time system, all those things that we take for granted are really the other curriculum that shapes and creates us. See, the lessons are superficial. And we must then question all of those things. Power is the capacity to affect the conduct of individuals through the real or threatened use of rewards and punishments. In other words, we must gain the capacity to reward our friends and do what? Punish our enemies. If you do not have that capacity, you do not have power. That's right. This has got to be developed. Power is the capacity of some persons to produce intended and foreseen effects on others. Domination does not mean total control, but the ability to set the terms under which other groups and classes must operate. Which we had time to talk about that. As I've told you before, I've seen many black people and many of us going to conventions dealing with the education of our children, never bothering to do what? Define what education means to us. Yes. We talk about schools without defining what schools mean to us. Consequently, we end up not finding solutions to our problems because we are operating under the definition of another people. And I tell my class all the time, once you make up your definition of what education is, you can see the solution to your children's problems. Don't tell me, but that ain't the school's role. I said, what? The school is what? Whatever you want it to be. That is your right. If the school is for you, then you define it. But when you accept this definition as made by the other people, then you'll find that there are certain things schools cannot do. You see? And this is where domination is very subtle, you see. It makes people operate in terms of those that are dominating the system. That's why you have to look at your terms. Power is essential to being. It is essential to one's sense of significance. That one counts for something, can get recognition for one's existence. Power is essential to the development of personality. When we talk about the personalities of ourselves, of our children, and of our people, recognize that these personalities that we complain so much about are personalities that develop from a sense of what? Powerlessness. In fact, power is the ability to become self-creating and self-defining. And consequently then, if we are to be what we have the potential to be, then we must be self-defining. We must have the power to do so. We must have the power to create the conditions that can create us as a people. So we have to understand then, power is essential to life. It takes power to walk. It takes power to talk. It takes power to think. It takes power to do everything. Consequently, power is central to life itself. And you cannot reject it unless you reject life in itself. Power is never equally distributed. For power to be exercised, the power holder must control some base values. The power holder is in a position to offer those values as rewards to others or threaten to deprive others of those values. You can't have power, ladies and gentlemen, giving your money and giving your markets and giving your talents and everything else, the best that you have, to other people. Other people cannot take what you have, your material, spiritual, and other resources and cultural resources for granted. You have to husband those resources and those values that other people want, because that is your handle over them. This is your negotiating coin between you and the world. And consequently then, you must create value and you must husband value. The values are the power base, and they include physical safety. In other words, when your enemy gets too bad, you have to do what? Threaten his what? Physical safety. That's right. Deal with it. This is the reality world, ladies and gentlemen. It's ugly, but it's real. How many of us are controlled right now in terms of what? Fear of what? Fear for our physical what? Safety. How many of us are obeying the rules of this society because we fear for what? Our safety. Because our safety is where? In the hands of what? Other people. How much freedom and movement and thought and how much potential you can develop if you